Hello Earthlings and welcome back to my space. On today's video, we're going to be covering a case I'm pretty sure we all know by now, and that is the slaying of the 4 Idaho students. And though it has not gone to trial, they have arrested a suspect. And so without further ado, we're going to get right into this video. Lifelong best friends Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Magan went out Saturday night, November 12th, and they went to the Corner Club bar in Moscow, Idaho. That same night, Ethan Chapin and Zana Kernodle, who were dating, went to the Sigma Chi house. The other 2 roommates, Bethany Fuke and Dylan Mortensen, also went out in Moscow that night. Keely and Madison were seen on a video at Grub Truck, a local food vendor, at about 1:40 in the morning, and they got a ride home from an individual getting back at about 1:45 a.m. The individual who took them home was not considered a suspect. Ethan and Zana got home about 1:45 as well. Ethan did not live there, but he was spending the night with Zana. Zana also had DoorDash delivered to her house at about 4 in the morning. Dylan Mortensen, one of the surviving roommates, said she woke up at about 4 in the morning to what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog. A short time after, Dylan said that she heard someone she thought was Kaylee say something to the effect of, "There's somebody there." But police believe that could have been Zana on her phone because records show that she was on TikTok at about 4:12 in the morning. Dylan Mortensen said she looked out of her bedroom but saw nothing when she heard the comment about somebody being inside the house. She says she opened the door a second time when she thought she heard crying coming from Zana's room. She then thought she heard a male's voice saying something along the lines of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Dylan then opened her door again when she heard crying, and this time she saw a man with black clothes and a mask walk by her. She stood there frozen and in shock. She didn't recognize the man that walked past her towards the sliding glass door, but she did describe him. She described the man as 5'10" or taller. She says that he wasn't very muscular, but he was athletically built. As the man walked towards the sliding glass door, she went into her room and she locked the door. 4:17 in the morning, a security camera that was located less than 50 feet away from Zana's room picked up the sound of a dog barking, along with distorted audio which sounded like voices or whimpering, which followed then with a loud thud. On November 13th, Bethany and Dylan called over their 2 friends because they thought one of the victims on the 2nd floor had passed out and was not waking up. At 11:58 that same morning, a 911 call was placed by one of the roommates' phones requesting help for an unconscious person. Where the FBI was called in order to help investigate the killings, it was left up to the Moscow Police Department. Corporal Brett Payne, one of its officers, said in a statement that he arrived at the King Road residence at about 4 p.m. He states that as he entered the room, he could see 2 females in a single bed in the room. Both Madison and Kaylee were deceased with visible stab wounds. Payne spotted a key piece of evidence that he believed that the killer meant to take with him. He says that he noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Madison's right side. As they continued to search the house, they found Ethan and Zana on the floor below, both dead. They believed that the killer burst in and attacked both of them. According to the coroner, the victims were stabbed in the chest or the upper body. There were no signs of sexual assault, and the victims were most likely asleep, even though some did have defensive wounds on them. And after the autopsy, it was concluded that the 4 students were murdered by being stabbed to death. Madison Magan, who was 21, was a senior at the University of Idaho and was majoring in marketing. She was also a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority with Zana, and they both had jobs at the Mad Greek restaurant in downtown Moscow. She grew up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and had known Kaylee since junior high. Kaylee's mother even said that the 2 were best friends. After graduating this spring, Madison had plans to move to Boise. Ethan Chapin, 20, was a triplet, and he and his siblings were enrolled in the University of Idaho. Ethan was a freshman majoring in sports management and a member of the Sigma Chi fraternity. He was also dating Zana Kernodle. He was from Conway, Washington, and attended Mount Vernon High School, where he played basketball. Attending the University of Idaho, Ethan lived his best life, according to the obituary. He loved the social life, intramurals, and tolerated the academics, and also continued to play sports. Kaylee Gonzalez, 21, was a senior majoring in general studies, and she was a member of the Alpha Phi sorority. She grew up together in northern Idaho with Madison, and they were such close friends that they were practically sisters. After graduating, Kaylee had plans to take a trip to Europe and was expected to move to Texas. She had everything going for her, absolutely everything, Kaylee's sister said. She had a job lined up, and she had worked really hard for it. Zana Kernudel was 20 and was born in Avondale, Arizona. She was a junior who was majoring in marketing and a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority. Her and Ethan were friends before they started dating, and Ethan's mom even says by the summer, Zana was spending time with the entire Chapman family. She was lighthearted and the kind of person who always uplifted her room, her older sister Jasmine said. Her sister also says, "You rarely get to meet someone like Zana. She was so positive, funny, and was loved by everyone who met her." They sent the stealth to the state crime lab. Security camera showed a white sedan repeatedly driving past the home, arriving in the area the last time at 4:04 a.m. and leaving at a high rate speed at 4:20 a.m. Due to the fact that officers could not see a front plate, an FBI agent who specializes in vehicle identification examined the video and concluded that it was most likely a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra sedan. Police initially said they did not believe that there was an ongoing risk to the community after the murders, but just 3 days later, on November 16th, Chief James Fry stated that they could not say that there was no threat to the community. They also stated that even though they previously thought the attack was targeted, they later came and said they were not sure whether or not they were actually targeted. After they sent the sheaf to the crime lab, there was enough DNA material to create a DNA profile, though it was unclear how long it took for them to create this profile because the police were very hush-hush about all the information and the evidence they had gathered. They were even so hush-hush that the families themselves were getting frustrated with the lack of evidence or the lack of progress that it seemed that they were making. Even though they had this DNA profile, it's useless unless they have actual DNA to compare it to. Investigators worked backwards and found what they believed to be the same car that was in the surveillance video as it left nearby Pullman, Washington, home to Washington State University at 2:45 in the morning. And it headed to Moscow, Idaho, and then came back to the Washington State University campus area at about 5:25 in the morning. On November 29th, Pullman police looked at a list of white Elantras registered at Washington State University. They found a 2015 model with a Pennsylvania license plate, which was registered to Kohlberger. The Elantra police were searching for did not have a front license plate and any of the surveillance footage from the night of November 13th. And according to police documents, detectives learned that displaying a front license plate is not required in the state of Pennsylvania. Even though the public was not aware of Dylan's physical description of the assailant, police noticed that when they looked at Kohlberger's driver's license, they noticed that he had bushy eyebrows. He was also tall and thin, so he fit the profile that Dylan had given the police. Police looked through Kohlberger's cell phone history and found that he had been around the victim's home at least 12 times in the preceding months. Even though the police had all this evidence against Kohlberger, it was all circumstantial. They had nothing yet to tie Kohlberger to the house itself. The cell phone location data analyzed by Moscow police did not provide specific locations, only general areas. But they did have DNA from the sheaf that was left behind. Days after the attack, Kohlberger actually changed the plates on his car. Kohlberger had been driving around with Pennsylvania plates for months on the back of his car, but not the front. And on November 18th, he actually registered his car in Washington State and got new plates. A few weeks after that, he drove back home to Pennsylvania with his father. Even though police had identified Kohlberger's car as the car that was in the surveillance camera, they did not seize it. As he drove to Pennsylvania with his father, the pair were stopped twice by Indiana police for minor driving offenses on the same day. Police body camera footage shows Kohlberger in the driver's seat and his father next to him. When he was pulled over on December 15th by the police, he had Washington plates on his Hyundai. Authorities in Indiana said they weren't looking specifically for Kohlberger at the time, so he was released without being ticketed. FBI agents went through Kohlberger's phone records and found that he had actually turned off his cell phone shortly prior to the attacks. And the assumption is that he did this in order to avoid detection. His phone actually springs back to life at 4:48 in the morning on a road that leads out of Moscow. Another key detail from Kohlberger's phone records was that he actually returned to the vicinity of the crime about 5 hours later, but before the police were actually called. The DNA that was found on the sheath, it was sent to the FBI's genetic genealogy branch. The FBI went through the public database until they landed on a match that led them to the Kohlberger family. After investigators started digging into Kohlberger's histories, they became very interested in his academic history. He had completed a master's degree in psychology and criminal justice at DeSales University, a Catholic institution in his home state of Pennsylvania. His teacher was Catherine Ransland, a forensic psychologist whose books include an account of her long correspondence with one of U.S.'s most infamous serial killers, Dennis Rader, known as the BTK killer. Kohlberger, in the autumn, began a PhD at the Criminal Justice and Criminology Department at Washington State. Fellow classmates said that he had a particular interest in serial killers. Kohlberger was also interested in the more mundane aspects of police work. Shortly after beginning his course in Washington State, he applied for an internship at the local police department, the same police department that was now part of the murder investigation, and he said that he was interested in helping rural police departments collect and analyze data. During their surveillance of Kohlberger, he was seen multiple times outside the Pennsylvania home wearing surgical gloves. They also observed him leaving his family home at about 4 a.m. and putting trash bags in the neighbors' garbage bins. At one point, the agents recovered the garbage from the Kohlberger family's trash, as well as those that they saw him place into the neighbors' bins. Profile results from the trash stated that the person who lived there was 99.9% certain to be the father of the person who left the DNA on the knife sheath. Undercover agents continued to watch Kohlberger until 1:45 a.m. on December 30th. The police smashed through the windows and the doors of the Kohlberger home in order to arrest Brian. This is what is called a dynamic entry, and it is a rare tactic that is used only in cases where the suspect is considered to be high risk. Brian was extradited to Idaho. He was charged with 4 counts of murder as well as felony burglary. Only spoke to confirm his name and the fact that he had a representation in the hearing in Moscow, Idaho. He remains in a local jail where he has been denied bail. And if Brian Kohlberger is, in fact, found guilty of these crimes, he can face the death penalty. He appeared in court not too long ago on January 12th, and in this court appearance, he waived his right to a speedy trial, and so his preliminary hearing is set to be June 26th. It's also important to note that when Kohlberger was in custody, he allegedly asked investigators if anybody else had been arrested, and he had a cold, blank stare when he asked this question. Due to the fact that Kohlberger has not been to trial yet, we definitely have a lot more questions than answers. I hope that the family gets the answers that they deserve, and ultimately, no matter what the answer is, there's nothing that can justify the brutal slaying of these students, and I just hope the family gets the justice that they deserve. I don't know if police are going to release more information about this, simply because with the trial coming up, they might want to keep things under wraps, but if they do, I will update you guys. But until then, if you like today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I upload weekly, and until next time, be safe.